It's time for another Dice Tower review with Brian Hoyer.
Hi, welcome to another Dice Tower board game review. My name is Pete.
And I'm Pete.
That's right, Pete and my brother Pete. Google it, you'll get it. This week we're going to be looking at Operation Novgorod, an expansion for Tannhauser. And the reason we're doing an expansion is because we had a lot of interest expressed when we did our Tannhauser review. In fact, a few of the comments were, finally, it's about time. I've been wondering when a reviewer was going to do Tannhauser. So because of the, the want for it, we decided we'd pick up an expansion, see what it adds to the game, see if the component quality stays up, and see what we think of it.
Now, we're not going to go through a whole review of the gameplay. You saw enough of that on the last video. If you haven't yet, make sure you go check it out because there's some really cool tips in there. For this, we're just going to look purely at the components, purely at the pieces it comes with, and determine if it is worth the money that you're going to spend on it. What does it look like? What do the components bring to the table? Well, let's pop open the box and find out.
Now, of course, one of the main things that this large, oversized box expansion brings to the table is a new board. And as you can see, it's got that same very large, oversized map, extremely colorful, beautiful artwork and design to it. They kept the same circle for moving your characters in the line of sight with the colored circles. If you're on a light color as your opponent, you can see them and shoot at them, etc. That rule hasn't changed. You still have the entry circles. This one has one in each corner, which is kind of nice, unlike some of the maps that came with the original box that only had 2 entries. So now you can have maybe a 4-player game going on, etc., or have more options at least. And it's a really nice board. Now the downside is, were I to flip this over, because hey, it's a double-sided map. Except that it's not. This is the exact same mansion map that came with the base game. It's a repeat. So if you buy this expansion, you will not have 4 maps like you should. You're only going to have 3. I'm not exactly sure why they did that, and yes, I am a little bit disappointed. It's still beautiful, and I guess if somebody spills on your other one, you have a backup, but I have no other clue as to why they would do this.
Okay, now we talked about the fact that Tannhauser kind of chinched us on the maps. Now, one thing that they did not chintz on is the 3D characters that it comes with. These things are gorgeous, well sculpted, extremely well painted, great detail. These things are just amazing. And once again, they are pre-painted. We didn't have to touch these at all. They come right out of the box looking like this. And the big guy in the back, the Zorka, that guy is just mean looking. It is just an amazing piece of work. Now, the original box set came with 2 factions, basically what amounts to what you could consider the Axis and Allies during the war. The expansion that we're talking about here today brings in the Russian front on this. So these characters are based on the Russian military and the Russian army. So you now have a 3rd faction to play with, and actually you could bring in an extra player because of that.
And of course in Tannhauser, if you have characters, then you need your character boards. And this comes with 5. Now I know it comes technically with 7 figures, but you'll notice that the voivodes, these little droid-like characters, share 2 to a board. And they're kind of weaker characters, and since they aren't humans, they don't have the mental attribute. You'll notice that also. But otherwise, you do get 3 main characters, 3 hero characters, and then 4 of those little voivodes to play with to make up the faction. You can buy extra Russian figures separately to add to it, so you can actually have a 5-person team like the other 2 factions have. But this is what this box comes with. So you start off with 3 characters, 4 little droids, and then you can always add to that later if you'd like. So that's about it in a nutshell.
The good thing about this expansion is that they didn't break anything that was working well before. The unfortunate part about this is they didn't fix anything that wasn't working well before. If you notice the character cards, they still require all the use of the little chits that come with it, the little dial that doesn't really stay on the card. And it doesn't come with the cards that we talked about in the first preview. It still came with the little chits that you would have to memorize to determine what their effect was. So they didn't break anything that we liked. They kept the quality, excellent quality, but they didn't fix anything that wasn't working.
We would definitely recommend, again, getting the little deck with the mini cards, because that deck covered the base game, this expansion, and several of the other character expansions all in that deck. They released it after those things had been released when they decided to update and change the rules. So these characters are all covered by that same little mini deck. If you have it for the base game, which we recommended when we reviewed it, you already have all of these characters and the cards for them. So that's kind of nice. And then as far as the rulebook, we didn't cover the rulebook this time because you can just toss it out. The second edition of the base game has that big fancy, thicker rulebook that again covers all of the first several expansions, including this. So it actually has even updated rules and everything too. So you don't need the rulebook for this either. It's basically you get it for the characters, and that one board.
The one thing I really liked about this adds a third faction. If you have it's late. If you have a group of people that you want to play this with, the first one was basically really focused on a 2-player game. This would actually open it up to a 3-player game easily by having that third faction into it. But again, I cannot stress this enough. Please go out and buy that deck of cards. It'll make your life a lot easier in playing this game and makes the transition really smooth.
And then, of course, I would also add price kind of comes into play. The main base game's suggested retail price is about $70, and you get a lot of more figures and things with it. This has a suggested retail price of $60 with about half the characters, one board. That's a pretty tough pill to swallow.
And not just one board, but only half the board is a new map.
Yeah, well, yeah, one map basically you're getting. That's it's disappointing at this price point. I mean, to say the least. Final thoughts? You want to start?
Sure. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely horrible, avoid it at all costs, 10 being go out, you must buy it immediately because we say so, I would actually rate this expansion about, the expansion itself, about a 5. I don't think it's horrible. It still has the problems, and of course this came out before the new rules, and so those problems were set into this to begin with. But I'm really disappointed in the fact that we spent that much money on it. Doesn't come with as many characters as the initial board game came with, and it only comes with one new map. That kind of disappointed me. It adds a little bit to it, but it doesn't add a whole new flavor to the game, so I can't give it more than just about a 50-50 shot, about a 5.
I'd be in the 6-7 range. If you love Tannhauser, then it's worth getting. I mean, pick it up, especially since you can find it for better prices, of course, if you shop around. So it would be higher. If you're a hardcore Tannhauser fanatic and you don't mind sinking the money into it and you really like this system and you want the pieces and that extra map, great. The thing it does bring, though, is a lot of the scenarios in the basic rulebook can't be played with just the base game because it covers so many expansions. You actually need this box to play a lot of the scenarios, so it's worth it for that, too. Again, I'd be in the 6-ish range probably, but if you want to play those scenarios and you love the game, I'd bump that up to a 7.5 probably.
Well, there you go. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.